Well, good morning to you. One day we're going to come on here and I'm going to do my Fred Rogers impersonation and sing to you, Won't You Be My Neighbor? It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Glad to have you here. Thank you for coming in and watching this and studying the Bible with us. And if you will, again, just remind you every chance you get to like and to share the post. It would be appreciated. Again, as the way Facebook works, it promotes the video and puts it in front of more people that way. So if you'll stop what you're doing real quick and like it, like the post, share the post, I would appreciate it. And never know what wouldn't that be cool to get to heaven one day and find out somebody got saved from hearing the gospel because you liked the video. That'd be a pretty cool experience. So if you do that for us, but in the meantime, grab your Bibles or your phone and tablet, and let's look at the 24th Psalm. 24th Psalm. We're going to begin there this morning in the first verse, and this psalm. Again, is one that doesn't really give us much information above it when it just simply says that it is a psalm of David. But this psalm, what it is a psalm that was written to be sung when the Ark of the Covenant was returned to Jerusalem. The Philistines, excuse me, at one point had captured the ark and had held it for a period of about 7 months. And during that time, they had a number of issues in their camp, problems, disasters, till they finally decided it just wasn't worth it. And so they decided to take it back to Israel, to give it back to Israel. And so when they did, it never got all the way back to Jerusalem. The ark stayed at Kirjath Jearim for a while, which was out in a real rugged area during the time of Saul. And when David came to the throne, his goal, his ambition was to bring the ark back to Jerusalem. And just kind of summarizing here, condensed version, they tried on one attempt, made one attempt to bring the ark back, and it was a disaster. And so now they're going to try again to bring the ark home. And so as they are bringing the ark home, we read in other parts of the Bible, we read about how there were singing and dancing going on as the ark was returned, and shouting and sacrifices being made. And so as they do that, this psalm was a song that they sang as the ark was being returned then back to Jerusalem. And so that's kind of the background of the psalm, and it's a little bit kind of just a real quick version. If you want more details, you can go and read 2 Samuel chapter 6, 1 Chronicles chapter 13, in and around those passages, and you'll get some information. Again, the ark was represented for them God's presence among among the people. It was simply it was a box that had been covered with gold. Inside of it was a copy of the law, was a pot of manna, was Aaron's rod that had budded in Numbers chapter 17. It had the lid was called the mercy seat, and it was there that God had promised to meet with his people. And so you can again understand why it would have been such a big event for the ark to be returned. It had been gone from Jerusalem, counting the time it was in the Philistines' hands and the time that it was in Kiriath Jearim. It had been outside of Jerusalem for probably about 60 years. And so it has been a while. And so again, Saul had evidently not really been concerned about bringing the ark back, but David, he wanted the ark, the presence of God, being back inside of Jerusalem. And so as it comes back, they have this celebration. There are a lot of kind of prophetic things that go on in this psalm about Christ. It is again this psalm is kind of part of the 22nd, 23rd, 24th psalm that are about Christ, and so it's an interesting psalm. But I want to look at it kind of with this thought in mind, and because again that ark represented the presence of God to Jerusalem, to the Jews. So how do we enter into the presence of God? How do we enjoy that experience in our life? I think all of us recognize and understand the importance of the presence of God in our life. So how do we enjoy that? How do we accomplish that? And I think this psalm can give us some idea of enjoying the very presence of God. So let's dig into the psalm this morning. I'm going to try to get a couple verses covered. It says, "The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein." And so we kind of see a common pattern here that we've seen in some other psalms. If we're going to enjoy the presence of God, the first thing that we have to do is to accept the presence of God. We've got to accept the reality of God. We've got to acknowledge that there is none like Him. David begins this song with, this is kind of, when I look at it, I almost see the words to "How Great Thou Art." The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. He immediately he starts this psalm by acknowledging God and His position of authority, his position of superiority in the world, as he says, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. In other words, he says the earth is the Lord's and everything on it, everything that makes it up, the world and they that dwell therein. He says it is all the possession of God. And so to begin to enjoy, to experience, I think, the presence of God, I think this is a place, a beginning point that where we start is by acknowledging who God is and His position as King, Creator, Owner of everything and everyone that is in the world. I think sometimes we tend to think, man, seems to. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody say it. But we kind of live this way sometimes. Like, God's out. God, you take care of heaven, and we'll take care of earth. Again, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that, but if you watch the way we live, I think that's kind of accurate statement. But David begins with the acknowledgement that it's all his, that he is Lord of all. And again, we see the word Lord there, all capitalized, the word Jehovah. And so he begins by acknowledging God's position, God's domain would be the word, that he is, that this is all his domain, that he is in control and possesses everything. And David acknowledges that, and to acknowledge that, when we come into acceptance and acknowledgement of that truth, there's a other side of that coin is to acknowledge that God is in control, is to acknowledge that I am not. And that's something that's hard for mankind to do. We struggle with acknowledging and accepting the fact that we are not in control. And to say that the Lord, that the earth is the Lord's, means it's not mine. To say that the fullness of the earth is the Lord's, then that means it's not mine. Those that dwell on the earth are His, then it's not mine. I am not even my own. The Bible tells us in the New Testament we are bought with a price. We are simply we're at best renters. We are sojourners. We are travelers. We're just passing through this earth. The biblical word would be stewards or managers. We're just kind of managing His property. Right now, we're kind of like landlords. You take an apartment complex usually has a person who lives in the apartment complex, and it's their job to take care of the complex and make sure it's maintained, and make sure that the people living there are doing what they're supposed to. Well, that's kind of what David says about us in this earth. We're just we're property managers. We're just we're holding on to His property temporarily. We don't hold the deed to it. We don't hold ownership of it or anything in it. That's what it means when it says the fullness thereof, that everything in it is His. We are just passing through, that it all belongs to Him. And that's that is a truth, that is a fact that I think is really important for us to get a hold of and to remember in our life. I think that's a lot of times I think about how many different ways misunderstanding that truth affects our life and affects our world. I think we would be better stewards of this earth if we remembered that we are just property managers. We're just passing through. Again, I'm not a environmentalist by any stretch of the imagination, but I do recognize that that as stewards, as passing through God's earth, that we should be aware and careful of pollution and destroying God's creation, and so all the things that extends so far into other areas, even out into how we treat each other. It's not just a matter of the environment, but it's a matter of how we treat each other, how we handle each other. I think when we think about that, it touches on the issue of abortion, that everything is God's. That simple truth. To grasp that truth, I think it transforms how we treat one another. It answers the racial issue that is raging through our nation. It answers so many questions when we are simply aware of this one truth and recognize and honor the very presence of God, that everything belongs to Him. What a marvelous, life-changing concept, just to sit wherever you are right now and to scan your eyes around and say, you know what? I don't own any of this. None of this is mine. Somebody has said, I've never seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul trailer. We are just passing through. The biblical word is sojourner. We're just passing through this world, and one day we're going to leave every bit of this behind. And so to acknowledge the very presence, the authority, the position of God is a life-changing, transformational realization to get ourselves, as Clint Eastwood said one time, a man's got to know his limitations, and for us to recognize our limitations. This is not my world. This is my Father's world, and I'm just a steward. I hope you'll take a moment today and look around and just look at God's world, and remember that you were put here to be a steward. You were put here to be a manager. You were put here to take care of. Look at those people you work with. Look at family members, friends, neighbors, whatever race, whatever gender, whatever culture, country they come from. We are all put here by God, and we are all His creation. And those folks around us, they are the very property of God. Maybe we need to learn to treat our world and people around us in that way. I hope that helps you have a better day. All right, we'll see you back here tomorrow as we continue in the 24th Psalm.